Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today is a continuation of my Death Stranding theory video. It's going to be a little different because rather than going down a rabbit hole of physics, I've actually noticed something in the trailer that I thought was interesting and that maybe someone else has noticed as well. If you're familiar with the 3-hour theory video that I posted before, it was all about knot theory, string theory, and physics and how it related to Higgs, guitar, they're traveling to the different beaches, Mama and her BT, and just some different things that I felt like really related to the first game's lore with like the knot cities. However, in the trailer, whenever we were watching it originally, Hideo had tweeted out that once you see this, everything will make sense. After discussing that with a friend of mine on the Discord server, we kind of were just talking about how we didn't really see anything. We just assumed that it meant that we were supposed to realize that Higgs and this samurai baby maybe had some connection, and that maybe the implication is that that is Lou because of the baby laughing, and we just sort of left it. I then went and started making screenshots of Higgs's outfit just to kind of better understand what he was wearing, because we had some discussions about whether or not he was a cyborg or just wearing armor, which that is for another video, but we do believe it's just armor and that he is not a cyborg in any way. The thing is, in the trailer, whenever he touches Lou's pod, and I'll make sure I put a clip of that up, everything kind of begins to float, much like whenever Sam would put the Cupid into a terminal and it would link you up to the chiral network and it would begin to float. After he puts his hand on Lou's pod, one knot on the quipu floats into the air and lights up, and it's only for a second. The trailer is cut strangely and has jump cuts so that you're not quite sure exactly what's happening. It's possible that the cutscenes are out of order, so it is possible that the samurai baby comes before or after a certain clip, but it appears that there are no jump cuts where Higgs touches the pod, his necklace lights up, and then immediately Sam speaks and Higgs is distracted or removes his hand and the connection is lost and the light goes out on the necklace. Lore-wise, I think that that could relate to the beach and Amelie in multiple ways. The first and most, I think, probably likely scenario is that it's simply showing us that Lou's pod has a deep connection to the beach because of Lou's body, spirit caught in the pod, being somewhere else, being on the beach or in the seam. And Higgs touching that shows us that that is a thing. So I think that's the most obvious reason for that to happen. I think a less obvious reason is that Higgs himself is connected to the beach. You can see in his costume that he has what a lot of people thought was an umbilical cord, but it's really just like an aux cord that plugs into his electronic guitar, which appears to be using BT strands to shoot lightning. You can find out more about that in my other video where I kind of explain how that would work. But because he's plugged into the beach, it may be that they are kind of linking, and so that is what is causing kind of his necklace or the chiralium, because I think that is the implication of what it's made out of, which is a whole nother thing, because why would you give a child chiralium to make and wear around their neck? Because that was Sam's original necklace, but I digress. So I do think it comes back to something regarding the beach. I did find some articles and interviews that were interesting that mention the necklace, or a necklace that is very similar, and that has me thinking that perhaps this has something to do with rebirth or drawing energy out of things. So I think there's a possibility that when he touches the pod, Lou is trying to draw him in or connect with him. And let me just go ahead and get into the articles I found from Death Stranding 1 that I think support that something is going on here and that possibly this is what Hideo was speaking about whenever he said things would be revealed to us. Now, to talk about Sam's quipu, we need to get a few things in order. Sam's quipu was made by him. Even though we call it Amelie's quipu, that quipu was actually created by Sam when he was a child. The Bridges members at the end of Death Stranding 1 all have a quipu on their outfit, and it was created using Bridget's umbilical cord, which sounds crazy to say out loud, but they were all made from her umbilical cord so that the Bridges team could find each other. So even though the beaches were technically shut down at that point with Amelie's passing, it's implied that those quipus that were created for the Bridges team, Sam, Mama, Lochna, Fragile, Die Hardman, Deadman, that they are all created from Bridget's umbilical cord. The quipu that Amelie wears was originally created by Sam when he was around 10 years old. He says specifically to Amelie, every time I make a new friend, I add a knot, which evidently he was way more social as a kid because there's about 18 knots on the quipu, meaning that he's made 18 connections. And also, I think explaining to us as a viewer that he was not always so closed off. When he gives this to Amelie on the beach, she says, "Thank you, Sam. I'll cherish it, and I'll add a knot every time you visit me." I double-checked that the knot was there in Death Stranding 1, and the light that is lit up that knot is there on both Higgs' game model, where he steals Amelie's quipu, and also in the original cutscene where Sam gives the quipu to Amelie on the beach. So just to reiterate, Sam is given a dream catcher by Amelie, which we can assume is made from items on her beach, probably, unless somehow she took that from the real world. But we can kind of assume that it is items from the beach, and that is what Sam wears to help with his bad dreams. It's also what gives him a connection to her beach. The quipu was given to Amelie by Sam, and that is her connection to Sam, and it was very important to him, and that is why he was able to bring it to the beach, even though it's a real-world object. So she is able to always find him because she has this item from him, and he is always able to find her because he has the dreamcatcher from her. A side tangent that I would like to go on is we know that the Bridges team quipus that were replicas were created from Bridget's umbilical cord. We also know that Sam's dreamcatcher has a chiralium stone or core in the center of it, and I wonder what that was made of, because I do think at some point we will find out that maybe it has a connection to something. Before returning to the quipus and their shape language, I want to talk about an interview by Die Hardman that you get at the end of Death Stranding 1 during his inauguration, and it explains that Bridget used to wear a necklace, and it was shaped like a Y, and it had lit up her entire chest and stomach. I looked through her model, I looked through Google, I looked through all the screen caps and the footage I have of Bridget in game, and I never saw a single clip where she is wearing a necklace. She wears an ascot, but that is a cloth, and I think that they would call it that, and not refer to it as a necklace if that's what they were referring to. So I want to read you that entry because it's very strange and very interesting. In the interview by Die Hardman, which is titled Bridget's Necklace, he says this: "Her necklace, a simple Y-shaped thing, caught in the light, and for an instant I saw something impossible. The necklace was glowing, radiant, spreading across her body, chest to abdomen, like something was being drawn out of her ha. I thought at the time, though I couldn't tell you why. Every time I saw her with that necklace, I remembered the light. It was only much later that Bridget told me about her daughter Amelie and how it had been a virgin birth. Now, ignoring the strangeness of the virgin birth metaphor, I think it's extremely uh, odd that it's described as a Y-shaped thing, only because we have so many Y's and X's in the trailer on various coffins and armors that you see. It's just a shape that we see quite often. It says that it caught the light and it started glowing and was radiant, which is what we see in the trailer on the little piece of Higgs's necklace. After that, it explains it spread across her body, chest to abdomen. So to me, it sounds like the Y shape. Maybe the necklace is a very long necklace. So like maybe where the bottom of the Y is would have reached down to her navel. And so that is what it means by spreading across her body. It could also just mean that the light was so bright that it just seemed to go quite far away from where a necklace would normally sit. But that's all it says. And so again, I'm very curious, what was that necklace made out of? Could that be the same quipu that Sam has? Sam does say that he made it in the game, but it could be that he was given that shape that it has by Bridget, and then he added knots to it. So it could be possible it's the same necklace, but nowhere in the game is Bridget seen with a necklace. The other character that wears a quipu would be Higgs. Now, Higgs obviously does steal Amelie's quipu, and he wears it around his neck, and it is the same quipu that we see Sam give. The model matches for all three. However, when talking in the Discord, a couple of friends had the actual model for Higgs from the game, and when you look at his model, he has two, I don't know if you call them fake, but he has two kind of replicas of the quipu that are made out of strings, and they're attached to his hip and his side, so kind of under, like by his ribs. Now that's interesting because, first of all, it's never brought up in the game that I know of, and they're very hard to see. To me, that shows intentionality that they put it there, even if they knew it might not be noticed by fans. And we all know that Hideo is really great about adding in details that become important later. Of course, he adds in lots of details that may not mean anything, but it just seems interesting that he already had two kind of hackneyed quipus. They're just homemade. You can tell that they're made out of string. He created them himself. They're not made out of chiralium or anything like the actual quipu is. It is just string. Whenever Higgs's necklace lights up in the trailer, I consider the words that Die Hardman says, which is something was being drawn out of her ha. Ha is the body, and I would assume that if something is glowing, like it's trying to come out of her, it would be her soul. So her ka, which would, I guess, be Amelie. So I think if we can apply that to Higgs in the trailer, if the necklace is glowing like something is being drawn out of him, then perhaps Lou will have the ability to tug on people's souls or ka. Maybe that will be something that she has access to, especially since it seems if she is the baby samurai that she's able to control things like husk or puppets just like Dollman can. In closing, I'd like to tell you about the references to necklaces and totems that we have so far in the game, including the director's cut. We have Coffin's necklace, which is the same shape and inspiration as the sarcophagi that we see in the trailer, as well as the shape of the new quipu, which is very odd because Coffin was added in to the director's cut and was not a part of the first game. So if you're unaware of who Coffin is, that is Fragile's mother, and she basically became a terrorist to try to stop Bridges from sacrificing babies to become the chiral network. And so she wears a coffin on her neck, and it is the exact same coffin that we see on the new Cupid. Sam, of course, has his dream catcher, which, while not a necklace, he does wear it around his neck, and so I'm going to consider it. That was given to him by Amelie, and it is shaped exactly like the web that she is caught in at the end of game battle. The new Hideo merge that is being posted online has a very similar web, but the web is a star, and I think that will represent Lou, since she's the only character we've seen a star on, with the exception of the star that Mama showed her baby BT when she was trying to calm it down. It's worth noting that the web star shape is actually on top of a head silhouette that is implied to be a brain dead mother, as that is the title given to it on other merch when related to Fragile Express, which is odd. I don't know why those two companies are being related together, as Fragile does not have a still mother in any way, so I'm not sure why her company, Fragile Express, would be related to Brain Dead Mothers, unless it is another connection between Coffin, who of course named the Fragile Express, and then found all the BBs and the still mothers in game 1. I just wanted to go ahead and show those clips because I think that the shape language is very similar, and likely they will be related to something in this next game. Lastly, we have totems, which are mentioned by the novelist's son, and items from the spiritualist. The novelist says that all kinds of intriguing things have been said about gourds in particular, that they symbolize the womb and the universe itself, for example. He talks about totems and talismans and how they represent a kind of wisdom that we must have forgotten about that protects us from evil. And of course, we have a lot of womb imagery where mothers try to protect their babies. We also have the spiritualist that says this in an email to Sam. They're important, all the more now that I've managed to visit the beach. The Egyptian treasure I told you about, it opened a gateway while I was examining it. I'm not exactly sure how or why it happened, but I began to hear the sound of crashing waves. I focused on it, became lost in it, and when I came to my senses, I was somewhere else entirely. I looked up into the sky and saw a great glowing sphere, the moon. Now, lots of people have said that they feel like she is not to be taken seriously. She's kind of kooky. However, we know from Sam's nightmares in the flashbacks of Death Stranding 1 that there is a point where he hears something, he opens the door to his private room, and outside is an area that looks like the beach that we see kind of in the Ludens intro, as well as the new trailers, and he gets jump scared by a giant whale that tries to eat him. So I'm actually thinking there is the possibility that she did see the beach in some capacity. I'm not sure how she actually traveled or if she really did, seeing as she doesn't appear to have dooms. It could have just been a nightmare of sorts, but it does seem to match up a little bit with what we know. The Egyptians knew how to get to the beach. They had it right. We hear that in a lot of emails. Higgs is very obsessed with Egyptian culture and traditions, and then we know that the moon appears to be part of the beach or new area that we go to in the new trailer. Finally, the spiritualist asks us to bring her stone fragments. The only reason I bring this up is because at first I didn't think anything of it, but upon watching the trailer again, I realized that The stone fragments could possibly be related to the stone monolith that we see in the trailer that the cultists appear to be walking towards, and it's possible that that is the gateway that she was speaking about, and that perhaps by having those stones, you're able to cross over. And there is some speculation that perhaps that is how Higgs crossed the beach back into the world of the living. Amelie does mention in Death Stranding 1 that she can take Sam halfway, that her beach, it goes the whole way. And in the trailers, we see Hartman is plotting the beach on a 4D map and appears to be mapping out this other world or this mirror world, which goes back to the idea of chiral symmetry and how things are mirrored even if they're not exactly the same. I hope you've enjoyed this kind of dive into the lore and speculation on what might be happening with Higgs, BB, and the necklace that is lighting up. If you have played recently and you have noticed that there is some lore that I am missing, I'm only halfway through the Death Stranding wiki, and my playthrough is not yet complete. There's possibly items or interviews that I have missed, and I would love to hear if you have any thoughts, or if you think any of this sounds correct, or if you have theories of your own. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!